What's up, y'all? David Vobora, founder of ATF, here with my best friend and my boy, Roy Tuscany, founder of High Fives Foundation. So we've partnered with High Fives for the last 8 years? 9 years.
2015 was Schick is when it all started.
It is.
Yeah.
So met Roy. Actually, you want to tell the story how we met?
Yeah, I mean, we were at Gas Monkey Garage Grill there for a 40th birthday celebration for Richard Rawlings. We all thought it was, wow, we get to meet this celebrity. What amplification of, what this might do, getting these great grants. And lo and behold, what came out of it was like the most beautiful thing. We found this friendship that then evolved into this partnership that then created an opportunity that now has served 138 veterans through the Military to Mountains program, which now, in its closing in on 10th year, is going to be serving over 150 veterans in 9 weeks of training, 1 week of skiing and snowboarding. It's been unbelievable.
Unbelievable. The crazy part is I was training these vets and these warriors, and again, what we were uncomfortable with doing inside the wall started to become comfortable, and we needed some tests. You're like, dude, let's get them on snow. I'm like, a bunch of Marines from Texas, we're gonna get them on snow? I don't even know this guy's ever seen snow. But it worked, and we've replicated, and dude, the work that we've done collectively, the way that you've influenced ATF. I mean, Roy is an adaptive athlete himself, overshot a 100-foot jump, an extra 30 feet, ended up burst fracturing his T12 vertebrae. But some people really helped serve him, elevate him, and then he wanted to pay that forward. And so for us as an organization at ATF, he's done so much for us in establishing, pathways to have a unique culture and an entrepreneurship vibe. When I think a lot of people see charity as, oh, we're poor, give to us, right?
Yeah.
And I just love the way that you broke that mold and was so disruptive in the space. So what for you have you really learned over the last 15 years of your organization as that social entrepreneur, conscious entrepreneur?
I think it's so funny, so many entrepreneurs are trying to constantly increase the amount of money they have so then they can try to sell their business.
Right.
Warren Buffett has always said the greatest salesman in the world could sell their nonprofit. And so my mindset has always been, okay, how can I attract enough people to one day to want to buy this idea? Well, it's not for sale, but the whole idea has always been, how can I make it attractive enough to try to have someone want to buy it or to become lucrative in the idea of trying to buy it. And that's just been the idea. And I've never treated it in a way that's we need a brand, we need core values, we need a mission, a vision, all these things that major businesses have. Well, I think for so long, it's always been hey, we're bootstrapping this and we do it all from a place of giving. Well, you can still give and you can also give with your heart, but you need to put food on the table.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things at the end of the day is taking the idea of still giving and being philanthropic and not trying to ever have this idea of selling this business so that it can be, scaled. I want to scale what we're doing. And the only other people that I'm really seeing doing that in that space is, ATF, High Fives. And I've all learned a lot of my stuff from NASCAR. I mean, NASCAR is a non-profitable business. So why not just use what NASCAR has done and now do it in the nonprofit world as well?
Yeah. Doing good is good business. And when you put on something that is a product to be invested in, right? You can get the tax write-off, but the investment is the lives you're changing, the stoke you're bringing, and the way that the culture and the community pours back into itself. That's the thing I love about High Fives athletes is there's a role and responsibility in being part of the collective and carrying your weight, right? And having a value add to that. And so, I don't know, man, for you, you've worked so hard, you've raised gobs of money and you've given away just about as much. What for you has been the hardest part in raising money or giving, or hardest or best part?
I think the hardest part for me is and I think you've had this too, is Roy High Fives, Dave ATF. It's I'm still Roy Tuscany. And a hard thing that always shows up is always this, that High Fives is Roy and Roy is High Fives. And I think that separation, the idea of separation of state and church from the government. Well, if they could figure it out, that'd be amazing. But that'll never happen. And so if I could figure out how to separate myself and still be my own identity, but also still being the face of, the founder of, and the leading driving force behind High Fives. But that separation of when do I shut myself off from being a fundraiser, a program, manager, and all these different things, and then just being Roy. And I think the beauty of it is having a kid. And I think probably for yourself as well is when all of a sudden you get to just be dad. And dad's the best. Yeah. Dad's the best.
Yeah. Do you think that's probably the most misunderstood part of kind of you and your role?
Yeah. It's when do I shut off? And like, yeah, you know this too. Like, if a big donor calls or an athlete calls, especially like an athlete, like an athlete calls me at 11 o'clock, they're like, Roy, I'm struggling. Okay, what can I do for you? Like that's when I turn myself back on. But it's like you have to be able to set those boundaries that exist so that you still can be yourself, but then at the same time know that there are certain people that if they reach out to you, it's because they don't have anyone else to reach out to, and you're that guiding light that says, hey, like darkness might be shadowing you right now, but let's remove the clouds and like let's show the blue skies and the sun that's above you.
Yeah, which I know that you've done. I mean, there's countless, thousands of times that I know that you've picked up the phone for people that had no one else on that line besides you, and that's something that I deeply respect and admire about you. One of the things that you are so good at is like you're a catalyst in everything that you do. And I think that lots of times people see, well, Roy's just like gets lucky. He sits next to this person on the plane, or he does. Like, I believe in the law of attraction, and like attracts like, right? And if you have this lack or scarcity mindset, right, you're not in the state of gratitude where you believe everybody has something to offer.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think the secret is for you and your approach to how you connect with people and how that manifests growth and new opportunity?
Like, I recently heard this new thing, emotion. Like, it's a word, okay? But if you actually take the word and you put a hyphen in it, and then on top of the hyphen you put an I and an N, emotion becomes energy in motion. And so for me lately, I'm like, oh my God, I know for a fact that when I'm in a darker place, like I have dark days. I'm not always hopping on the unicorn from the unicorn farm and riding it around the ranch. I have those days too, but I know that when I'm out in public or if I'm out doing the things, if I operate in a place where I'm putting energy in motion, my energy is what people want. They're thriving for that. They're saying, why don't I have that in my life? And it's like, well, I'll give you some of mine. Like, it's okay. Like, on the way down here, randomly just started talking to a lady. Her husband is the chairman of Nike. And, like, I didn't go into the conversation being like, oh, your husband's the chairman of Nike? I found that out, like, 90 minutes into our conversation. But I could literally see her, like, she was hungry, so I shared my pretzels with her from a box, And she's just like, oh, my God, how'd you know I was hungry? I was like, oh, you just looked like you were a little tired today. And she's like, how'd you know that? And that spawned into this 90-minute conversation. Her husband worked for eBay, now works for Nike. He sits on the American Heart Association board, so they have that philanthropic side. They live in Sun Valley. They're skiers. Yeah. So, like, we had all these things to connect on. And at the very end of the conversation, she's like, well, I'm going to tell my husband about your foundation. And I was like, oh, okay. What's your husband do? She's like, oh, he's the chairman of Nike. I was like, oh, okay. But dude, that's how these all work. And, I think like so many people think like, oh man, Roy's this or Roy that. It's like literally all I'm doing is I'm putting my energy into motion. Yeah. And I don't really think that like people that just think of emotion as like, sad or all the different, different styles of emotion. Like if you put sad out there, guess what? You're going to get a sad response. Yeah. But like choose the time when you want to put your energy into motion. And I think that's like a big takeaway.
Yeah, I certainly find myself in that same experience. Something that your mom told you that stands out is about smiling.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also what you do. Like, and I've tested this. I'll walk through the airport, right, with just the shitting grin, seeing how many people look up, and then they reflect that because we're mirrors of each other, right? And that's that energy in motion. Like, speak to what your mom told you and kind of like how that boils back into what you're saying.
My mom always told me straight up, smile. It makes people wonder what you're up to. And like that's always been like a takeaway for me. Like I always try to smile. I even like now have this new stuff from this company Mox to try to get rid of these lines that have come from so many smiles. But like the truth of the matter is like I've always taken that. And like I think too, like my mom, like she was a teacher for 38 years. She influenced so many kids. And my mom every day when she showed up to class always smiled. It made the kids wonder what my mom was up to. She interacted with so many kids. Like my mom had so many wedding invitations for years after years after years of all these students that she had in 5th grade. Who knows who they're going to marry in 5th grade? But when they got to that point, they remembered that person that helped probably set them in a really great place. And that was my mom. And I think like, if you smile, it makes people wonder what the hell you're up to. Why is that guy smiling? Yeah. And like you do it in a genuine way too. You don't do that like shit-eating
fake it till you make it.
Yeah, like not that like sly smile that you're like, what are you slying about? But like a true smile. Like, and you have them too, man. You're gonna have to start using some mocks here as well on this to tighten up these lines that we get from smiling too much.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've earned those, man. And part of me is going to die an old wrinkly man from smiling too much.
Yeah, I'm all right with that. I'd rather die with wrinkles of smiles than a wrinkle of frowns. Like a wrinkle of frown, that face, like that's like those old cartoons that you always saw. The guys would have those big frown marks on their cartoon faces. You're like, I don't want to deal with that person.
So coming back to Military of the Mountains, and again, Roy is involved. He comes out every time we have this class, gets on the floor, trains with the guys. Was doing yoga yesterday with the crew. What for you fires you up the most? Like you talked about some of the numbers, and I love that it's always increasing and evolving, but what sticks out to you the most about what we've achieved through Military of the Mountains in this partnership?
I think like truthfully, like the truth of the matter is like I have created lifelong friendships with individuals that from my world I would have never have met. The mayors, Zim, Rage, Q, like the list goes on and on. And then unfortunately, we've lost some pretty amazing friends too in the process. Trav, I've got a tattoo of Johnny Bravo. My next tattoo is Tell Me I Can't, which is for Big Z. It's like we've had these individuals that we've unfortunately lost, but now it's like there are now reasons to why to be even more involved in this program because of the fact that like if I could have been there to, grab Travis or grab Biggs, whatever it was, like that would have been a huge takeaway. But like you can't save everyone. But what we can do is we can show up. And we can show up and show that, like, I am here because I want to firsthand see you work hard. I want to see you as your rawest form. So then when we're skiing and all of a sudden we go by each other and, like, that hoot, that holler, the touch of the pole, it's got more than just that instantaneous. It's like, I saw you grinding to get to this point, and, like, what can we do now? And I think that's, like, the biggest takeaway is, like, the lifelong friendships. I mean, the mayor is, like, one of the most like amazing humans I've ever met. And like, generationally, my parents, my grandparents, they taught me, unfortunately, and nothing against them. And I think all our generational, past have taught us this, that you see someone disabled, you smile and you keep walking. Well, why not challenge that now to smile, interact, and like see that person as a whole human. Yeah. And I think that's been like one of the biggest takeaways is like breaking that generational mindset that like you see someone that's disabled, smile and move on. It's smile, interact, engage. What's your story? And like you get to see that firsthand when I come down here. Meeting the class yesterday, there's 10 amazing human beings that are humans. They're wholes. They all have a mind, they all have a heart, and they have breath in and out. And that's the same thing as an able-bodied person, but they don't know how hard they worked. And each of those person, like, they're not only just being an individual that's been a person that's served, they're now being served in a way that says you show up and we're going to give you a whole new life.
Well, I can confidently say this, the ones that we have lost, I know that the days that we had together were some of the most peak experiences, and that relationship's a two-way street, right? Like, you may not be able to save people, but I can confidently say that the empowerment and enabling in a positive sense during that time was the richest part of their life.
Yeah. And I mean, like, wearing, a mark on my arm for those folks, like, that continues that legacy. And, like, they'll never go away. And, like, every time, when we go to Palisades, like, a part of our journey every time is going to find Trav, And, like, it was funny, 3 years ago when we put up that sign, we're like, Colin, you got to do this. You're the tallest person. Like, put it as high as possible, and the snow line will never be there. Well, last year, we had to have Ski Patrol dig 2 feet down from this spot that we never thought the snow would get to. Yep. And lo and behold, there was Trav again. So It's like every time. This year, we don't have as much snow unless we get this miraculous March, which maybe we will, because every time the veterans come, we get dumped upon snow, dumped upon. Yeah. And so I think, like, this year, regardless of where Trav is in the tree, like, that to me is every time like continuing, these legacies. And like you think about Big Z and stuff, like, dude, there wasn't anybody that was more confident in his clothing. And like I know there are times where like a sponsor will send me a piece of clothes and I'm like, man, I cannot wear this. And then I say, wait a second, Big Z would rock this with even more. And it's like when I think of those moments, it's like, frig, man, like that's that genuine enrichment that person gave to you. And like I'll never be afraid to wear any piece of clothes because of the fact that Big Z would have done it. I'll never not show up for people because I remember like Trav, the year of COVID, like we had to cancel it on the last minute, and we canceled like 12 hours before the guys were supposed to take off, and Trav was already at my house. And Trav like literally stayed for 2 more days. And he's like, hey, I think it's gonna get better. And then finally on day 3, I was like, Trav, I think you gotta go home now, man. Like I'll take you forever, but for you to get home, like I think you gotta get on a plane now. And like Trav went home 3 days after technically the world shut down.
Yeah.
But Trav was there for 3 whole days prepping before everybody. And so it's always like those reminders. Like I will wear the wildest clothes in memory of Biggs, and I'll always show up for people because Trav always showed up for people. And then the stories from those boys go even further, but this is a public recorded thing, so we can't go so deep.
No, it's good. I think over the last 10 years, what I cling to is the investment that, again, like you don't take anything in this world with you, but those you do. I feel like that those are the imprints and the impacts and again, the ripple effect that you'll never know. Showing those guys, taking them up to that Trav plaque in the tree. I mean, I get goosebumps because tradition doesn't graduate. Even though there's some, they're not forgotten, and they left an indelible mark on the culture that we've defined. And so when we say tribe, right, we truly mean like it's the chosen family. It's Ohana, as you beautifully say. Like that's the piece. I mean, my last question was going to be the greatest lesson learned in 15 years.
I think the greatest lesson learned in the last 15 years is like the disability that I have. It stinks, man. I trip, I fall, I have hard days from it. But I know for a fact that there's 1,000 other individuals with disabilities that are worse than mine. There's millions, that would give anything to be at the point that I'm at. Well, why don't I just figure out ways to empower every person to feel like they are at the highest peak that they can be, regardless of what the limitations are. And like, it's wild. You think about like someone like Trav, for example, like Trav fully recovered from a spinal cord injury, but he never like ever was like, oh, like I can't serve you. Like Trav would do everything to serve everyone. And it's like, as long as you're always, recognizing that like you're at an ability that so many people would give anything to be at, well, why don't you serve all of those people so that they have the potential to feel like they can get to that same level? And I think like that's like one of the biggest takeaways is like, never freaking be humble in your pursuit, but be relentless in the idea that like you can serve everybody in a way that shows them that like their disability is not limiting. And, we use the term adapt and destroy, like break down those walls so that people don't have to climb over them again. And I think like the journey that we've been on showcasing like individuals that, society would say, oh, this person can't do that. And like, I don't want to be said like, oh, that's so inspirational, you're able to do that. It's like, is it, or is like what I'm really doing to show people that they can like live the most fullest life regardless of it, and like stop hitting the rewind button and start hitting play and start living life again? That's the big, like right there. And, I think like that's been like the greatest gift is like showing everybody that you can get to this limitless pursuit as long as you're relentless in your pursuit of it.
Yeah. You've given a lot of people that permission slip for sure, broken a lot of barriers. If you don't have a force multiplier, a guy like a Roy Tuscany in your life, go find one. Go figure out where you can serve. And it's not just, I'm going to go sign up to volunteer. It's like, do something that had a profound effect in your life, right? If you love basketball, maybe that's the arena for you, right? Yeah. If it's basket weaving, maybe that's your thing.
Underwater basket weaving. I tried so hard in college to get that class, and I never got into it, but I would have given anything to be an underwater basket weaver.
You might have ended up being a Navy SEAL if that was the case. Yeah. So. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, man. You'll be hearing about more with Military of the Mountains throughout this course, and some of those personal stories of these veterans that we get to serve. So thanks for tuning in.